And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GMAT Club's YouTube Debriefs. My name is Evan. For those of you who don't know me by that name, I really hope you would, given the fact that this is all about me today. You hopefully know me by my forum name, NightBlade354. And as some of you have probably guessed, again, I am not the one who is doing the interviewing this time. I am the interviewee. The wonderful man to my left or right, depending on your screen, is the amazing, the immaculate Charles Biblos, also known as GMAT Ninja. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, this man has had a remarkable career. What with the notoriety, the litigation, his subsequent deportation to Canada, and that country's refusal to accept him because Trudeau was afraid he'd lose an election to him. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot find a better person to do this interview. He is a good friend, a mentor, and a colleague, and I am honored to have him here with me today to help me do this interview.
Thank you, Evan. That was the best introduction I think I've ever had. Maybe also the least factual one. I did get deported from Russia once, but that's another. I did get kicked out of Russia once, but that's another story for another time. Most of you watching probably know a little bit about Evan, longtime GMAT Club moderator, admin, member of the team for I don't know 4 or 5 years now, at least, something like that.
Over 5, yeah.
So this is one of the guys that stayed up all night with me when I was foolish enough to do a 24-hour fundraiser live stream nonstop. He was up all night with me. One of the good people of GMAT Club. What I want to focus on today in this debrief is that's funny. Is not me. I want to focus on Evan. This is one of the guys that had a 4-year journey to finally get accepted to University of Virginia Darden. And folks, if you're just starting your GMAT and MBA application journey, this is often what it looks like. You know, we see these nice debriefs where people come in and they crush the GMAT and they get admitted to top 3 schools, and it takes them 6 weeks and it's all just magical. That's not the reality for most people. Most people who land on their feet and end up at great schools end up fighting for it, going through a lot. 4 years might be a little bit extreme, but it's not unusual at all. So what I want to highlight today is Evan's 4 years of applications, 4 years of pain around the GMAT, the LSAT, all sorts of tests taken. And just give you a taste of what that's like, what it's like as a reapplicant, some of the tools he used along the way, worked with some of my favorite admissions consultants out there along the way for 2 of those 4 years. So all sorts of fascinating stuff. If you are watching this live, please ask anything you'd like. We'll do our best to get the best questions on here. Evan, where I'd like to start, I'd like you to walk me through, because we have 4 years of applications, and some of that's law school, some of that's business school. But I want you to just walk through that and the pain and some of that disappointment fairly quickly. So starting back in, if I'm not mistaken, 2019 is when you started applying to law school.
Yep.
So walk us through that, what that experience was like, how many times you got punched in the face by schools, and then kind of what made you make that shift over to business school. And then we'll get to kind of those last 2 years of applications.
Well, Charles, as you can see from my face, I took quite a beating over the years. I was not born like this. By the way, our GMAT Club wants me and Charles to let you know that you should like and subscribe. I personally don't mind if you do or don't, but just do be aware. So yeah, it was an absolutely fascinating journey. When I first got out of business school, I was a business undergrad, and my initial thought was business school. And so my mindset sort of shifted to the law school process because it seemed so much sexier, so much more powerful. Like, oh, business school, that's kind of cool, but law school, be a lawyer, sue people, wear the suits, really be someone who can either make lives miserable or make people very happy. That seemed like an appealing combination. And so I had started studying, which is why I came to GMAT Club. I set aside the books because I'm like, you know what? I was a fool. I want that title. I didn't do any research prior. I didn't really know what a lawyer was or what they did, but nonetheless, lawyer. Studied for a year for the LSAT. 2019, I got around the 90th percentile in the LSAT, which is good enough to warrant T20 consideration for a lot of schools. I had leveraged the company that I used for studying. It's called Seven Sage. So I used them for consulting as well as to help study for the LSAT. Their consulting practice was okay. I wasn't enamored. Their prep program was amazing. I'd highly recommend it for any GMAT student. I mean, they will get you to that finish line when it comes to critical reasoning and reading comp. So 2019, applied to, I believe, 6 law schools. I'm feeling good. I talked with the consultants where I think it was like, I had a good shot at 3 or 4 of them, and 1 or 2 of them were very much stretch schools, but nonetheless, it seemed like that was the appropriate route to go. What nobody could have predicted was 2019 to 2020, COVID. COVID came crashing into our lives. And for those who are applying to law school, Boston College, which is, I'm in Massachusetts. I am from the United States, and I'm from the Massachusetts area. BC was one of the schools I was applying to. It's a decent program. And I agree. Do not dislike this. If you do dislike it, I will hunt you down on the forum and ban your account. Yes, I will. So BC was one of the choices I thought I would very much get into, maybe even have some scholarship offer from. They had oversubscribed their class by, I think, about a factor of 2, meaning for every seat, they had 2 acceptances. And this was as the pandemic was rolling through, so schools were completely overblown. Schools that I should have been waitlisted at, Cornell, I got rejected from. Schools that I probably should have been accepted to, BC, I ended up getting waitlisted outright, and then later on rejected from. I'm not bluffing. So that was 2019. That was my first time around through this process.
Okay, so you get hit in the face, get rejected from a bunch of schools unexpectedly. You're locked in the house. It's spring 2020. Bunch of results you weren't expecting. Okay, so then the calendar turns over. Next application cycle, last half of 2020, fall 2020 application cycle. At that point, where was your head at? So you took another shot at law school, but kind of a half-hearted one. Fair enough?
Oh, absolutely. So after being rejected, my mindset went to explore, figure out potentially, yes, this was a horrible blow to the ego. I should probably have my ego checked every now and again. This was a pretty big check. And I sat down and I said, okay, let's say it doesn't work out. Do you truly want to be a lawyer? Figure out the reasons why you wanted to study and why you wanted to become a lawyer, why you want to go to law school, and maybe reasons why it might not work out. And I paired that with going into my company. For those of you who don't know, I do work for a real company. I do have a job outside of GMAT Club. I am not just exclusively part of GMAT Club. And so I was able to see the way they handle the law side from the business perspective. And after shadowing them for some of the lawyers for a period of time, I realized, my reasons were not great to begin with. Again, the sexy title, the pay, the fact that, you could sue somebody and, be a jerk about it. I mean, all the things that get you a bad rap as a lawyer, I kind of wanted. And that's just not a good reason to be a lawyer. Awesome. And then having shadowed they're called, they're not litigators at my firm, but there are counsels. And so having shadowed our counsels for a bit, boy, the work is mundane. Oh my God, is it boring? You can't talk to anybody. You're in an office all day reading and yelling at somebody on the phone because of a word missing in a paragraph, or no.
So what I love about this, Evan, that is not atypical. So number one, we end up meeting a lot of people who kind of sometime fairly soon after undergrad say, all right, I want to do something prestigious. I want to do something good. Maybe they think about medical school. They think about law school. They think about business school. And those are 3 wildly, wildly different things. And so I've seen, I don't know, probably dozens, maybe a couple hundred students over the years start with law school and then go, maybe business school. So not at all. I think the more important thing. So for people who are watching this who are maybe earlier in their application journey, or maybe not early in it, maybe pretty far along, it sounds like the punchline as I hear you talk about the experience of 2 years of getting rejected from law school, maybe for good reasons, maybe for bad reasons. But either way, it kind of led you to this point where you get introspective and say, wait, what is it that I'm really trying to do here? What's motivating me to apply to these particular graduate schools? And then you kind of go, whoa, no, wait a minute. This is the wrong thing for me. And by the way, many, many miserable lawyers out there, a few happy ones. My wife is an ex-attorney.
I was just about to say, we talked about this quite a bit.
Yeah. My wife is a former attorney, and there's a reason she's a former attorney. She didn't love it. A lot of our really close friends didn't love it. I know a few happy attorneys. I know a couple of former attorneys who run a daycare in Savannah, Georgia. A lot of them jumped ship because it is not, for a lot of people, the happiest job on earth. In any case, the really important thing that you're saying that I think applies for a lot of applicants that I think is fantastic. It's that journey of introspection that gets you to going, wait a minute, why? What is it I'm really trying to accomplish? What are my motivations underneath it? So then we cut to your third year of application. So this is 2021. Now you're thinking business school.
Right. And actually, if I could take a step back.
Yeah.
So the first time around, had the 6 in hand, didn't get into any of them. And in all sincerity, that it was a godsend. To saying COVID was a godsend is clearly a hot take. But in my case, it was actually incredibly beneficial because I would have gone into probably at least 3 or 4 of those schools. I would have ended up going to law school and hating it. And the reason I went and tried to reapply, I only applied to one school the second time around. And it was because, to your point, I had done the introspection. I wasn't passionate about it, but at the same time, and this is a huge lesson I hope all of you can take away from this, the sunk cost. I had spent a year studying for the LSAT. Mm-hmm. I know I want to go to grad school. I spent a year studying for a test that broke my back that I absolutely hate. It's a great test. It's a lot of fun, but it sucks. I know there's a dichotomy there, but it really isn't horrible. It just sucks when you're doing it. It's an amazing test. Having spent so much time, the hours, missing out on friends' birthdays, staying up late nights to study for this thing, to train rides to and from my office, circling and annotating, all this gone because for what? Because I hadn't given enough time, consideration ahead of time and given enough thought. I wasn't okay with that. And so I held on. I was still hanging on by a thread saying, no. Let me prove that this wasn't a complete waste of time, even though it was one school and I knew I was lying to myself that I didn't even want to go. And BC, it was BC again. Their class was still oversubscribed. The essays were half-hearted at best. I mean, looking back on them, you could tell this was not a great application. And my body was telling me, stop. It's time to give up, at least for this. So it's not cost.
Yeah. And it's all costs that you could have avoided if you'd done some of that introspection up front and really questioned your motivations. And we see this all the time. We see this all the time in the GMAT MBA application world. Okay. Now we're into year 3 of applications. You've given up on law school and gone, wait a minute, business school seems like the better fit. That's going to turn my crank more. Before we get into the application part of it.
Whoa, it's a PG program, buddy.
It's mostly adults here. So you're motivated now. MBA makes sense. You feel really good about it. Before we get into the application part of the journey, and you've got a lot of really interesting things to say about that. You worked with some of my favorite people over at Ringo.
I did.
I read your applications from that cycle, and I thought they were fantastic. We'll talk more about those guys in a second. And kind of obviously the introspection got much, much deeper because you can see it in those year 3 essays. Before we get there,
sure.
Test prep. So you did all this. So you did your time with 7 Sage working on the LSAT. Mm-hmm. Got presumably good or great or something at critical reason reading comp, and we can split those hairs, probably don't need to. And then you get to the GMAT in, I think, 2021, probably. You're starting to take the GMAT seriously.
No.
Oh, it was before that. Okay, so get us into your GMAT fun. So
it wasn't even necessarily that. So again, you had the first 2 years of law school. That first year, so the third year, and this is the first year of the business school applications, I had heard rumblings, because we're still in the pandemic here. I had heard rumblings that business schools were potentially looking to accept the LSAT. And this piqued my interest because I was saying, okay, no, law school is going to work out. What do I do now? Because I know I either need a graduate degree of some kind or potentially, so I work in finance. I was looking at a CFA, which is the Chartered Financial Analyst accreditation. Takes 3 years to do, but it's essentially the MBA equivalent for finance. So those were up in the air. I was about to pull the trigger on the CFA when rumblings around January came in and said, oh, there's some top tier business schools that are going to accept the LSAT. It's not even a
waiver. We're in
January
2021 at this point.
Yes,
so you've already put in your applications to law school for those 2 years.
Yep.
And you're waiting on that one law school that you'd half-heartedly applied to. So we're getting to the end of that second application cycle of your 4 at that point.
Yes.
Law school applications are in, they're done, waiting for one more result. And you're realizing, wait a minute, this LSAT thing I did, maybe I can use it for business school.
The sunk cost isn't so much sunk anymore. Wait, there may be real purpose here. There may be utility to my year of studying. And this gave me a glimmer of hope. so I stopped thinking about the CFA, and I reached out to some consultants on the forum to verify, okay, is this accurate, and what schools are actually considering this. And it turned out that Michigan was accepting it, NYU was accepting it, Darden, which is UVA, and a handful of others. I think Goizueta, which is Emory, and maybe Texas as well. So these were big. This was a big deal to me because there was a potential outlet to go down. And at that point, I started reaching out to UVA. I started reaching out to Michigan. And for those of you wondering, those of you saying, okay, so Evan's worked at GMAT Club. He clearly has a leg up in the application process. I would say the only time it truly benefited me was when I was reaching out to the schools and I got in touch with maybe some of their higher ups. Like at Michigan, I was put in touch with a woman named Sujin Kwan. I think that's her last name. I should actually triple check that. Is it Sujin Park or Sujin Kwan? God, I'm so bad at names. Sujin, apparently, I didn't know it when I was speaking with her, is like the tippy top of Michigan here. And I had no idea when I was speaking with her. I mean, she saw my background. I was not dressed professionally. I had no idea who I was dealing with. But she took a call with me to say, yes, we're considering the LSAT. Here's some other schools that you should consider, and maybe we do a video series about this.
Awesome.
And so that right there was the only benefit to me working for GMAT Club that ever gave me that leg up to be able to communicate with somebody I probably wouldn't have had access to prior. But that gave me hope. Like, okay, we have potential. There's a spark. That's all you need. A little flame, just a little spark. Even if it's a wet match in a damp cave, you get that match going and you have hope. And so that is when, in addition to doing quite a bit of further introspection at my company, and that came with the essays that I'd write after, it was like the Grinch who stole Christmas. My heart grew 3 sizes bigger that day. There was something that could happen. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, and then some, I think. So we do have an audience question that I think is worth addressing here. And again, as always, apologies for when I slaughter pronunciations from Abhiyan saying, how did Evan get so good at critical reasoning reading comp? Nice response there. He's great at reasoning. No biggie. How did he get great at reasoning? So nice little back and forth there. I suppose the quick answer. So for those of you who are familiar with Evan, otherwise known as NightBlade on the forum, lots and lots of work on critical reasoning reading comp. One of the people who's guided a ton of people over the last 5-6 years in critical reasoning in particular. He started as a law school applicant. So he went through a whole lot of training in the LSAT. LSAT goes a little deeper into critical reasoning and you're more time pressured. So if you did all of that training for the LSAT, you studied for the LSAT for a year, did a program at 7 Sage, which is one of the better LSAT coaching organizations.
In my opinion, it's the best out there.
And that's what I keep hearing from folks too. And this is not LSAT Club yet, but yeah, 7 Sage has a great reputation. Tons and tons of lawyers are running around angry at 7 Sage now because they helped them get into law school and they're miserable as lawyers. But
I would have been one of them.
so that's where the background comes from. And is there some innate talent there? Perhaps. But a year of practicing for the LSAT is going to make you really, really good at critical reasoning reading comp on the GMAT. And that's where Evan's expertise has its roots. All right. So you got the glimmer of hope.
If I can add one more thing. So actually 2 things. One, for those of you who aren't familiar with the LSAT, if you think the timing on the GMAT is difficult, the LSAT timing is infinitely more challenging and the questions are significantly harder. So it truly is just about building up the reps. And if you can do the LSAT and do them timed, the GMAT it's almost a joke, which I feel bad saying, but it's true.
And I want to be a little careful with that. So I think everyone here knows, I mean, Evan and I have been tag teaming on these conversations over the years.
Yes.
That I'm a huge advocate of, if you're studying for the GMAT, struggling on verbal, critical reasoning reading comp, using LSAT questions, official LSATs is a fantastic way to practice. They're harder. Forget about the timing for a second. They're harder. They're more dense. They're a little bit longer.
Great Gatsby too.
Danielle Steele. I don't know. I'm trying to think of comic books. Maybe not quite that bad. But if you can power your way through the hard language on LSAT and you get used to that, and then you switch back over to official GMAT questions, in comparison, the GMAT questions are going to feel a great deal easier, and you're going to feel really, really strong doing the GMAT ones. Typically what I'd say to students, so LSAT, 25 questions in 35 minutes. And again, these are longer and harder than GMAT questions. That is impossibly time pressured. It is really hard to get through it. What I usually say to GMAT students is if you can do an LSAT section in under an hour, you're doing great for the GMAT timing. That's how horrendously time pressured the LSAT is. So great practice. That's where Evan got to where he is with the critical reasoning reading comp. All the good advice he gives on the forum, that's where it comes from. If you want to mimic that and use LSAT sections, awesome, fantastic for you. You're going to feel miserable starting out, most of you. And just be aware, ignore the 35-minute limit on the LSAT sets. 60, if you can get under 60, you're doing great. And it'll help you, even if you feel like you're getting absolutely annihilated. Your accuracy isn't greatest first. You're going to switch to the GMAT and be like, oh, this is easy to read. Okay.
Well, and actually, sorry, just one more thing to add on. There's like 90% overlap between LSAT and the GMAT questions, but there isn't 100%.
Yes.
There are some LSAT that aren't on the GMAT, so do be aware. And a quick story on my name. People have asked me repeatedly, how did you come up with such a stupid name? Rightfully so. I signed up for GMAT Club as a normal user. I was on an island in the state of Maine, which is in the northern part of the United States. It's in the northeast part of the United States, right next to Canada. I was on an island, very little cell connection. I was looking up questions at the time, and it popped up and said, you need to register. You visit us too many times for free. And so I'm typing in. It says, what do you want your username to be? If I had known what was going to happen, I would have chosen a different name. But I literally said out loud as I signed up. I'm not even kidding. Out loud. This site's going to mean nothing to me. It's never going to mean anything to me. It's a random site. It will have no impact on my life. Let's use a nickname from my elementary school days. And wow, did that come to bite me in the rear.
It's not so bad. It's memorable enough. Okay.
Okay, so please continue.
So nice tangent on critical reasoning reading comp for anybody taking the GMAT GRE as well. It's in there. We'll get to that. So here we are, application year number 3 for you. You've 2 years of law school applications, didn't go your way, had the epiphany, started to get introspective. Now I'm going to do business school. You've realized that there's business schools who are going to take the LSAT. You don't necessarily need to take anything else. So here we are, fall 2021, application year number 3 for you. Walk us through, where'd you apply? What happened? What went well? What didn't go well? Regardless of the outcome, what went well for you in that third round?
Yeah, no. So I'll be as candid as I can be about all this. So the first thing I did, I already had a score that was acceptable to business schools. And I did ask, okay, here's the rough percentile. I know there's no equivalent to the GMAT or the GRE, but hypothetically, if I were to apply with this score, and these were questions I had only asked consultants, but I asked the schools, like, would it be in the ballpark, or am I just too far down the ladder that it wouldn't matter? And the general consensus was, you know what? No, we would be, from the schools, we would be comfortable accepting somebody with this score.
Awesome.
Like, okay, awesome. My next step was to figure out which consultant to use. I interviewed, and I can't stress how important this is. Do not just go with the fancy marketing. And more importantly, don't just go on even GMAT Club. Don't just go on our website and say, okay, this has a 4.9 out of 5 stars. This must be good. Well, no, our reviews, I think the lowest rate is like 4.7. So you got to take our results with a grain of salt here. My recommendation is to get word of mouth. My recommendation is to then actually read reviews, not on our website, but actually Google and figure out what are others saying about this beyond GMAT Club. And third, do an interview. And I say interview for a couple of reasons. One, you're trusting these people with your life. And I don't mean like life or death, but they're going to know a lot about you. They're going to know your hobbies. They're going to know what you like and dislike. They're going to know your writing style. They are going to want to know who you are from birth to this point in time. They are going to get very intimate. You need to be comfortable with that. You also need to understand that there are sites out there and consultants out there who will basically tell you, yeah, you know, we'll get into Harvard. Yeah, 650 and an Indian engineer course. Well, yeah, we'll get into HBS. We'll even get you a 50% scholarship. there are so many frauds out there who are just trying to steal your money. I don't want to list anybody's name because I do not want to be sued for libel. But there are so many I could list that I know are just scams hoping to get your money.
100%.
Interviewing them gives you at least a little bit more confidence to see what their program is, get a feel for the people, and see if they're overpromising. When I interviewed, so I chose 3 to interview. I narrowed it down from personal experience, from people on the forum. Charles, I got your input at some point as well, I believe. I interviewed Avanti Prep. So that was from BB, who's the founder of GMAT Club. He gave me that one.
Awesome.
I interviewed Oringo, which is the consulting firm I ended up going with. And I interviewed Menlo Coaching. And they may have been from you as well, if I'm not mistaken, Charles, or something to that effect.
Could be.
And so those came from, both personal experience, seeing them on the forum, reading reviews, getting personal anecdotes from people saying, good job. Each one had a very different feel for it. Each one was, consulting is consulting, but each one had a different pitch and each one had a different angle they wanted to approach with me. Oringo found that GMAT Club was probably something to leverage a little bit more. And they also found sort of a what's the proper term here? They felt maybe networking more towards the development side of things was the way to go. Menlo, I think, wanted to really attack the financial side of it because I work in financial consulting, and they felt, given that, pairing the GMAT Club background with that could really make well for a consultant financial background. And so each one pitched me a story, and in the end I chose Oringo because I felt they probably had invested more time. Well, that's not fair to say. I think I felt most comfortable with Oringo.
There you go. And I think that's everything you just said there, Evan. I couldn't agree more. I mean, unfortunately, when you have that initial consultation with an MBA admissions consulting firm, they have an incentive to sell you. The really good ones are going to be totally honest, and they're going to connect with you, and they're going to give you a really good, honest assessment of your candidacy, where you stand, and they're going to connect with you, get to know you, and you can feel that difference. There are plenty out there who don't really do that, and you can feel the difference. And I think the 3 you chose to actually interview, it's like, yeah, they have the reputation for really digging in. And I don't know the folks at Avanti very well. I know the folks at Menlo and Oringo super well. And they're going to dig in. They're going to dig in for you. And I think the part that you just said that I think is absolutely critical for anybody sitting here going, oh, I'm going to go down this road at some point with an admissions consultant. Should I do it? Should I not do it? It sounds like what you're saying, Evan, is that in the end, between these 3 companies that you'd vetted in all sorts of ways before you even really talked to them, that there's you're going with the gut because this is going to be a really intimate, close relationship. And it's funny, right before you said the word intimate, I was like, that's what was going through my head. And that's what I usually tell people when they ask me, hey, which admissions consultant should I work with? I'll say, this is going to be such an intimate, if you do it right, this is going to be a really intimate relationship where this consultant's going to get to know you super deeply. And you're going to you're going to work together to tell your personal story. And a lot of that is feel. Like once you kind of get through those initial screens of, is this company reputable? Are they BSing me? Do I think they're trying to sell me? And at some point, it's not about, well, hey, you've gotten 1,200 people into Harvard, and this company's only gotten 800 into Harvard. It's not about that. It's about that feel. And do you have that connection with the specific consultant you're working with? And if you don't, they can be the best consultant out there, the best reviewed, and it's not going to work as well as that maybe less well reviewed or less renowned or less experienced consultant, where you're just feeling that connection and you can sit there and talk and the story comes out.
And so I'll just follow up and say, so of the consulting firms, again, spoke to all 3. Oringo told me they kind of laid it out for me. They're like, okay, so because you're applying with an LSAT, we'll help you with 3 schools. And they said, we think we can get you into UVA. We're fairly confident we can get you into UVA. We're kind of middling, like we're probably going to get you a waitlist at Michigan, and you're probably going to get rejected from NYU because those were the 3 schools I applied to. Looking back to the other consultants, again, it's not that they said anything wrong. I felt that maybe because, so Oringo was not, they had never had an LSAT candidate before. Very, very few had.
Right.
I felt, and they felt I personally felt they were willing to take it and take what the schools had told me at face value and try and go forward with it. I had the other 2 consultants far more weary about the idea of, we really can't do anything here. Frankly, we're worried we can even help you. And that also was a pretty big selling point. And
Which
you
is
don't want
awesome.
to go to school that said,
Yeah.
or go to the consultant firm that says we can get you in.
Yes.
But the fact that they were willing to take the schools at, as I already said, face value and understand that they were truthful made me okay, because I didn't want to study again for another test. This is, if they believe it and the schools have said they're willing to accept it, why I'm not going to call either of them a liar. Let's push down this road together and sort of figure it out as we go along.
And to be fair, I think it sounds like all three companies, Avanti, Menlo, and Aringo, I think they all had really good answers to it. I don't know, because there was no data in 2021. There really isn't much now. I mean, now there's a little bit of anecdotal data. Yeah, there still isn't any real data about LSAT and MBA admissions. So saying, boy, I don't know if we can help you. Great answer. Well, hey, the school said this. Let's give it a swing. Also a totally valid answer. If somebody had said, yes, you're guaranteed to get into Harvard with this, run. So okay. So applied with the LSAT, you've got your 3 schools working with Aringo. I guess tell us what unfolded from there.
Actually, I do feel bad. I feel like I trash talked Menlo and Avanti back there. No, again, it wasn't that they said they couldn't help me. It was more like, boy, we're really rolling the dice here, and we just don't know.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I think that they said something there that I think is spot on and very much right, where it's like, hey, we don't have a precedent for this, and the fact that they didn't look you in the eye and say, yeah, this is going to be great. It's like all the respect in the world, and again, the fact that I think it'd be really easy to interpret that, well, hey, you interviewed 3 companies and you chose one. There's something wrong with the other 2. It's like, no, you choose the 3 companies after a ton of research. You're kind of on the inside of this little niche that we're in, getting lots of good advice. So the fact that we're mentioning all 3, I mean, it's all complimentary. And again, I was very impressed with the essays that you produced with Danielle in the end. Anyway, I don't want to make this an ad for Aringo either. As much as I love those guys, they're fantastic. And Jen Shimry, Danielle, hope you're watching.
I hope so too.
Anyway, so let's get back to, so tell us what happened. You got more introspective. You wrote better essays. This is round 3 of graduate school applications. Had a lot of really good support, with somebody you had a good relationship with. You apply. And I think we all know what happened, because this is 4 years to Darden. But what happened?
Yeah. So what I'll say is I took the initial time. Obviously, any good consultant will make you do that deep introspection. I had sort of done it prior, going through and shadowing people on the law side. I also shadow people on our strategy and operations side.
Awesome.
And that was when it sort of all clicked. I'm like, this is what I want to be doing. Like this really fits the bill. This hits home. Yep. This articulates everything I've wanted. And so Aringo, the consultant that I use, they obviously made me do a far deeper dive. As I've already discussed, hobbies, career outcomes. What's your dream job? How did you get here? Talk to us about the fact that I'm an Eagle Scout. So I was a Boy Scout and an assistant Scoutmaster for a decade. So tell us how that shaped your experience in the office, everything. When we wrote essays, I agree with you. They were fantastic. Danielle was the consultant. Just give her a quick shout out. I honestly I don't think I would have been waitlisted at the schools had they not helped me. I think it probably would have been far more rejections. And that's the other thing about consultants. Consultants cannot make a rejection and acceptance. That usually is not the case. What they do is they usually make a rejection a wait list, and they usually make a wait list an acceptance. They usually bump you up 1 tier, at least in my experience. So I applied, interviewed with UVA, interviewed with Michigan, no interview with NYU, waitlisted at all 3.
All right. So what then? So you had, well, I mean, in all seriousness, because I think, I hope, for the sake of people watching, who are probably more likely to be, at the beginning of their journey watching this than 3 years deep, this is going to happen to some of you guys. And you have choices at that point, right? You can just mail it in, right? I mean, there's other options in life. If you've gotten to the point where you are a candidate, we forget this sometimes, where you're a candidate for these top 20, let's say, business schools, or top 50 even. You've got some really good things in your career, and you're going to have a great career, and things are going to be good, and you're motivated enough to do this, and you're hardworking, and you're getting, scores on these tests, whatever those are worth, that are competitive. You're going to have a really good career. And there's absolutely No shame in saying, well, maybe this grad school thing isn't quite the right fit, and maybe that's what I'm learning here. No shame in saying, hey, I learned something from 3 years of rejections, and I'm going to pivot and go do something else with my life. And everybody watching this who might go through that, you're still going to have an awesome career, because most of you already have really strong careers in your first few years out. So not to say there's anything wrong with that, but it would be a very easy thing to do. What kept you going? Why did you keep slugging away? Because you could just work at GMAT Club and continue at your company, maybe pivot to a different company and be happy.
That's a very good question. Again, so I've been slapped around now multiple times. Law school took a shot at me. Now the business school is taking a shot at me, which I found, by the way, terribly ironic. I wasn't rejected from a single school when I applied undergrad. I awesome. Clean slate. I thought I was the cat's meow. Coming into law school applications, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I might get my first rejection, but I think I'll be okay. Wrong. All 6. Full house, game over. And so having now gone through that, now going to the wait list on all 3 schools, yeah, definitely, the ego is already shattered beyond belief here. It was already pretty battered. So what I knew was being waitlisted all 3 meant, and by the way, I had a great interview with UVA, and I felt I had a very good interview with Michigan, and I can sort of explain why I chose in the next year when we talk about that application process, or why that all came to be. This was, I knew in order to go up in the world and to, more importantly, be in a potential executive level for a strategy role at a Fortune 500 company, I knew that this was the way that it was going to occur and going to happen. That this was the most straightforward, the quickest way to it, and knowing that that was what I wanted to do, that drive never ceased. That fire, again, we just need a little spark to keep the flame alive, to keep hope alive.
But what I'm hearing from you, Evan, is that this time, so as opposed to the law school where it was driven by sort of some, sort of 2-dimensional cardboard cutout image of what lawyers do, maybe some ego in there, maybe quite a bit of ego in there, and not a lot of like having it based in what you really want and who you really are. And now as you get to sort of 3 rounds of rejections, you're like, no, I'm crystal clear. Because it's so, and I know you've had these conversations so many times over the last 2 or 3 years now, that it's so easy for you to answer and say, well, no, this is where I want my career, my life to go. So and not to say that, I think you were kind of saying this at the time, if I remember correctly, where it's like, well, this sucks, but what's another year? It's, of course I'm going to reapply. This is very clearly what I want to do. Okay, I'm getting a little older here, but no big deal. It'll happen at some point.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. So I'll say my desire to go to law school was very much like dating the very, very pretty woman who's as shallow as a dried up pond. Yeah, sure. It looks fun. Sure, it's a great story to tell. You get to brag to your friends. When it ends, yeah, you're not fighting to try and bring that relationship back to life. The business school, on the other hand, was the very pretty girl. She's a little bit nerdy, but she has an amazing brain, a great personality, and that's the relationship you actually want to hold on to for dear life because you want to marry her. That's how I would describe this. You are absolutely right. There was so much more depth. There was so much more analysis that went into it. There was so much more drive and passion with it, knowing that this was the absolute right call and the thing that I wanted to do, and absolutely nothing was going to stand in my way of getting there.
Awesome. Okay, so practical advice here. So you reapplied to a bunch of schools, right? So you're applying to them a second time. And again, I think I've mentioned this a few times. I mean, I when you were waitlisted, the 2021, so your 3rd season of grad school applications, apply with the LSAT, waitlisted at 3 schools. I checked out some of your applications and I was like, oh wow, Evan's way more interesting than I thought. I'm kidding. But great, really. And I'm pretty harsh about that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't bother saying it on camera if I didn't think they were really, really good. I was like, oh, this is a really good way to sort of take this funky set of experiences and turn into some really readable stories. And honestly, that's a lot of why you got waitlisted. I mean, obviously that school's saying when you get waitlisted, it can mean a number of things, right? But my interpretation of those outcomes was, yeah, we don't really know what to do with this test score, maybe the academic background as well.
Oh yeah,
And
and I can hit on that if you'd like.
yeah, but we like this guy enough that there's something of interest to us. So while we're at it, okay, talk about your academic background. So you've got this mid 160 score on the LSAT. Nobody knows what to do with it. Run us through your academic background a little bit, so we have a sense of what schools we're looking at and going, let's waitlist this guy.
So wait, what schools is in my undergrad?
Your undergrad, yeah. Tell us about your undergrad experience.
So I went to I don't want to dox myself by giving it too much information and having people like figure out like, oh wait, Evan is this guy the whole time. Oh no, like let's bombard his LinkedIn. I went to a school in the Boston area, a very 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 good undergrad in the Boston area. It's not Harvard, it's not MIT. Otherwise, I don't think this would be a problem. I was decently successful. It was my GPA was decently north of 3.0. So, and most schools, I believe, once you hit 3.0, they don't really care. I mean, they care to a certain extent, but not so much. And to some degree.
Feel free to dodge if you want to, Evan, but could you be specific with the GPA you're comfortable telling us do you remember? Because that's one of those things we don't necessarily think about after the fact.
Do I feel comfortable? Let me think about whether I want to share
above or below 3.5. How about that?
Right around.
Okay, cool. Okay, so not a problem, but not necessarily something that's going to work. Not necessarily going to work against you. Not necessarily going to work in your favor. Oh, 3.9, that raises our averages. That's great.
No. So I mean, I was a good student, but I will say I majored in finance, and I did it because mathematically speaking, I knew I needed to bulk up somewhere, and I also knew that I wanted to work in finance. Investments are awesome. Right. So, I mean, I definitely was not a 4.0 student. Ironic, in economics, I was like a 3.9 GPA for my undergrad, but that was my minor. It wasn't my major. So if I had flipped that, my GPA would have been much, much closer to that 4.0. So I reached out to a bunch of schools when I was first waitlisted. Had the interview with UVA, loved it, had a great experience, talked with them for pretty much an hour. Same with Michigan, had an amazing experience with both. NYU, those jerks, they said thanks, but no thanks. We like it, but not enough to actually speak to you in person. We'll match with you on Tinder or Hinge, but we're not going to message you. We're just going to keep you kind of waiting there. But how's that for analogies? And so when I was waitlisted at Michigan and UVA, what I did was I reached out to them every so often. So every 2 months or so, I would reach out. And the questions I asked them was pretty much, look, you guys said you accept an LSAT. What can I do to get off the wait list? Good. I felt UVA was far more candid with me than Michigan was. And I don't want to get anybody in trouble at UVA. But UVA, when I had the one-on-one, the waitlist manager was an amazing woman. I love her to death. She told me, look, we love your profile. We love that you have an LSAT. It is more than we could want from you. We just don't know how to evaluate you. Yeah. I'm like, but you accept an LSAT score. You say it. You accepted the application. And her statement was, well, yeah, but we've never really had a person apply to the business school using only an LSAT. We don't really know how to handle you. And
we're fine. So they're saying we're fine taking this, but we don't really know what to do with it. So we're going to leave you in limbo on the wait list. Fair enough. And by the way, for what it's worth, I am not surprised at all. And I mean this in the best possible way. You are not the first person, nowhere close to the first person to say to me that your experience with Darden, when you're communicating with the admissions folks and their candidness, I've heard that over and over for a decade. So whatever you guys are doing over there, keep doing it, because you're making fans over here. And I just think it's a good way. They just seem really transparent, good way of interacting. And
I would agree. It won me over because and I think I had 3 different conversations with the waitlist manager, and every time she's like,
cool.
You check off everything. And she said during our second conversation, she said, so how would you feel about taking the GMAT or the GRE or the executive assessment? And this was in February. And I was like, no. You guys told me you accept an LSAT score. I did a year of studying. I'm waitlisted. You're telling me I may have to study for another test. You're telling me I'm still not there. I can see the dream. I can see Nirvana. And you're telling me I'm not in. Yeah, I can see it's right there. It's right in front of me. And so I said no. Michigan didn't tell me that they wanted to see it, but they're like, same thing. We don't know what to do with you. UVA may have went above and beyond a little bit and said, look, if you do take a test that is more in line with what we know.
Yep.
If you do take that test and it is close up, as in you get to our average, somewhere in there, odds are that would tip the scales in your favor, and we would view it very favorably to help you sort of get off that fence. Legally, I don't know if they were allowed to say that. They did.
Not a legal problem to say that. And honestly, like that's, again, it's part of what I really have appreciated about Darden over the years. Cause again, not the first or the second story I've heard like this, and different admissions committees totally understandably, this is not a shot at anybody else either. You know, you have to be careful about what you say because it can get misinterpreted so easily. Usually what I say, and if I remember correctly, I said this to you, you know, around that same time when you were waitlisted, Evan, often, not always, often what a waitlist, when you get on the waitlist, often what admissions committees are saying to you is, boy, it'd be kind of nice if we could see another number, a different test here. And often what we've noticed over the years is just doing it, even if you don't improve, you get the exact same score. It sends the right message because it's like, well, I'm serious enough to give this a swing. And you're in a little bit of a different case, Evan, because they were taking this test that they don't know how to interpret and going, like you said, it'd be nice to see something that we know. But I think even for somebody who took the GMAT, which is obviously the test that all the schools are the most familiar with, and you get waitlisted, yeah, sometimes it's worth another swing at the GMAT, even if you don't improve and you go, well, hey, I took another swing at it. And I've seen plenty of people get off the wait list just because they keep trying and the school goes, well, at least this guy's really serious about this and he's trying.
And so that's what brings me to you. So February, no, I had a call in November with Darden in Michigan. I had one in February with Darden.
That's awesome.
And then I actually had one at the end of May, beginning of June, but that's getting a little ahead. I reached out to you because February, I really sat on this and said, okay, I'm still off the wait list. We're starting to get to the end of February, beginning of March. So seats are filling up.
Yep.
Do I do it? Do I study again?
And I'm all do it. Do it. Yeah.
And at the end of February, I text you. So Charles is GMAT Ninja. He does run a tutoring service. And by the way, I'm not being compensated or paid for anything I'm saying here. This is all completely candid, above board. I am being as honest as I can here. I reach out to Charles and say, Charles, I think I need to take the GMAT or the GRE. They want to see a test score. It sucks, but I know I'm probably going to have to do it because I'm not getting off the wait list. Let's talk. And so you and I talked for, I think it was like 5 a.m. where you were out in like Colorado at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm still in Colorado. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
And I was watching my dog at like 7 a.m.
Baby at home waking me up at 5 o'clock every morning. So that's so yeah, you got probably a very slurry, groggy conversation. Yes.
We had a good conversation. You were playing with one of your children, like, oh no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Don't wake mommy. Don't wake your sibling. And you and I discussed, okay, what could be the best thing here? Taking the GMAT or GRE. And you and I talked and we decided, okay, based on the time frame, it's probably best for you to take the GRE.
Yep.
And so it doesn't really matter who you take. There are a couple of good options, but because the GRE patterns itself off the GMAT to a certain extent with tutoring services, odds are as long as you find a decent one, you're not going to harm yourself.
Right. And part of what the assumption was there, and we don't need to spend too much time in the weeds of the GRE, especially since we're pushing the hour mark here.
Mine always go over an hour anyway.
Of course, I had one go for 24 hours, so I'm right there with you. But I think what makes your situation a little bit unique, and again, probably not super helpful for viewers to hear this, but you had such a background in critical reasoning reading comp from doing the LSAT. It's really just a question of execution, quant, getting yourself to a round number they can live with. And I don't know that I don't want to veer off too much into sort of what you end up doing on the GRE side, but let's get back in. You take it in time. If I remember correctly, was it early summer that you took it, or late spring?
Yeah, so we agreed upon, and I won't go too far to the reads here, but I have a very good memory. I read constantly. I am reading this brilliant series called like the Tower of Babel series, which I have really enjoyed. I read constantly, so I have a fantastic memory. So when me and Charles discussed it, it was critical reasoning reading comp. Like, you're fine, ignore it. if you can memorize over like 1,500 vocab words and you can beef up your quant and actually refine that, because that was where I needed help, that's what you need to do to be able to sort of push the 320 and above mark. And so that was, we talked at sort of the beginning of March. I started studying at the end of March. So I picked up Magoosh. So, and because they had a decent reputation, I've heard of them before. They helped me with my quant, and they had all the vocab words I could possibly want. I went through them nonsensically all the time. I would say I spent 2 to 3 hours a day studying while working, while still trying to reach out to schools, say, hey, any room? Can I stop this madness? Can I stop studying because you're going to tell me I'm in? No, not so lucky. And then it was at the end of May. So I studied for 2 months, and I also hired Charles. So one of Charles's associates. I did reach out to GMAT Ninja because, and I'll reiterate, this was the dream. Going to business school was the dream. It was what needed to happen, and I was willing to spend not an infinite amount of money, but I was willing to invest whatever time was needed. I was willing to sacrifice whatever was required, get up early, stay up late, do whatever whatever tutors required of me, and to get expert advice every now and again. And I did need Charles's tutors' help to sort of point me in the right direction and to sort of help me get back on track every now and again. Yes, even experts do need that. And found it very, very helpful. I developed a good relationship with him, Harry, if I'm not mistaken.
Harry, yes.
And he was a good guy. We had a lot of fun conversations, and he definitely slapped me around quite a bit as well. Again, like the ego hadn't been bruised enough.
You needed the slapping around. We talked about you a lot.
And so I take the test, end of May. It was right here. This whole place is open, mind you. Like this entire section is open. I took the test. I told my family. I lied to the faces of my family. I said, look, I'm taking a realistic mock test. That means nobody can come in. Nobody can make noise. This has to be real, because I wasn't sure how I was going to do. I was very nervous about telling them, yeah, this is real, and then having them come in and ask me afterwards, how'd you do? So told them not to come in. They abided by it. I took the test. The scores came up. It was pretty much exactly what I needed, or very close to it. I basically ran out, like I was partying my face off. I was ecstatic. And my dad actually came up to me. He was like, what the heck, did you do well on your practice test? I'm like, oh no, I lied to you. That was the real thing. And I did well enough that I should be good.
I thought you were going to say something like, yeah, I was playing video games and I just beat Super Mario Brothers. Just
no. At that point, he was, so my family had been involved. And another thing that I think most people need to remember, you need support. My family was there to support me in every facet of this, emotionally, to help me get through some of the dark times. And really, when I was struggling or feeling down, or maybe I had a bad mock test, and family and support networks are so crucial to your well-being and you doing well on the test. So please, please, please don't forget that.
Yes. And anybody who's actually not fallen asleep, we're 53 minutes in here.
We're entertaining. We're good.
We're super entertaining. It would be interesting to check the stats on YouTube later. Did anybody make it to the 53-minute mark? But in all honesty, like I think the handful of folks that are going to make it to the end of this video, or hopefully more than a handful, GMAT Club, like what is it really about, right? You got this whole sprawling forum, and we got YouTube, and we got social media, and celebrate the best social media person ever, and there's all this stuff, right? And there's all this information, and all these experts giving all this advice. What's the really important thing? I read these debriefs, and the ones that tend to get traction are the one, I crushed the GMAT in 2.5 minutes, and I thank you so much. And again, apologies for mispronunciation. Abiyan, thank you for sticking with us. We tend to fetishize the debriefs where it's like, I crushed the GMAT in 3 weeks and I got a 810 on the right. And that's what gets to the top of the sort of that section of the forum. But for every one of those, there's dozens and dozens that are, I got my butt kicked and I don't know what to do, help. And nobody really responds. It doesn't kind of float to the top. It doesn't stick around. And then for every one of those that posts and says, I don't know what to do in the anguished post, there's dozens and dozens more for every one of those where they of course they would never post it, right? And they're getting the butt kicked. And I think the most pained of those that we see, and we see a lot of them if you're really paying attention to that section of the forum. And sometimes we get PMs from people that are direct messages from people who are really anguished. It's when you're isolating, right? And part of what I think, not to speak for BB, the founder of GMAT Club here, and his intentions, but I think a lot of sort of what the idea has always been is, hey, this is a place where you can have community and all sorts of opportunities to connect, in the chat rooms and wherever else, where it's like, hey, get study buddies, because you're going to need those shoulders to cry on at some point. Now, of course, Evan, you're here on the inside and you have massive support because you're friends with so many people who are involved with GMAT Club, in addition to having a supportive family. All of that's a very, very long-winded way of saying, like, hey, if you're here and you've made it through 55 minutes of a video at GMAT Club, use the forum to make friends and get your study buddies and make sure there's people around you, because you are going to have, I hope that not all of you have bad days. Many of you will. And make friends here, cry on shoulders, because that's arguably the whole point. So,
and if you do need somebody, you can reach out to me. Here, I'll post the full username in the chat right now. You can reach out to me anytime. I respond to every single message I receive, both good and bad. It is. I do it all. So you can reach out to me anytime. And one last thing before we continue, Charles.
We're only through year 3 out of 4, ladies and gentlemen, and we're almost an hour in. All right.
Well, we knew this would be long. I think we were well aware of that. I did say for 2 months for the GRE, and if we were to put that as the title, technically that would be correct. But also remember, I spent over a year studying the LSAT. I was always on the forum helping people and constantly having my skills either refined or brushed up so I wouldn't rust over too much. So this wasn't 2 months and he gets a magic score. No, I got here because of the years that I had put in prior to it. And don't ever overlook the stuff that built up to get you here, or for anyone who did really well. Odds are there was so much background that helped them get to there. So it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong, is that they just did so much ahead of time that it led to a quick turnaround.
And I'll add in there that the depth of your understanding of critical reasoning reading comes. So you study for the LSAT for a year, get really involved in GMAT Club, and tell me if this is unfair, but I mean, this has been my experience over the years. I've learned a lot more about the test by teaching it than by trying to take it. And when you try to explain things to other people, it's one teach, two learn. You're going to learn a ton. And that's part of the, not to make this an ad for GMAT Club either, but I guess we could do that.
I've got the shirt on.
Fair enough. Like and subscribe, folks. But the idea is that, hey, participate, try to write explanations, because it is going to blow your mind when you try to write about these things, even if you know you're right, as you try to write why it's correct or answer another GMAT Club member's questions. Boy, that is how your depth of understanding really shoots through the roof. So for what it's worth, thank you so much, everybody. Nikhil said something like that too. Thank you, Nikhil, for that comment. I feel very old with the 2 kids keeping me up at night. I wouldn't go that far, but thank you. All right, back to your story, Evan. We're running way off the rails here. So here we are, year 3. So you're waitlisted. It's spring. It's May, at the kind of the tail end of that year 3 application cycle, tail end of the 2021 cycle. You're waitlisted.
I got my score.
You get your score. It's something that you can send in totally straight face, very, very close to exactly the number that kind of, gets you in a good shape. And this is a 4-year story. So what happened?
Yeah. So I got all excited. I'm like, this is the end of May. Yeah, I know applications are tight. I know I'm still waitlisted, but Darden in particular, I'm like, okay, they said if I got a score in the ballpark, no, maybe it would probably tip the scales in my favor. So I was all excited. I was like, okay, I email everybody. I email the AdCom at Michigan. I email the AdCom at UVA immediately with the score. I'm like, here's the official. Look. I got it. I got within your range. Am I accepted now? And I took a call with Darden and actually Michigan, both at the beginning of June. Darden looked at me. They said, look, it's awesome you did this. Unfortunately, our class is pretty much booked. We accepted, probably a bit more than we wanted to, and then the summer melt didn't happen, and our class is about as full as you can get. If you applied, so this is where Darden actually did win me over. I was upset. I'm like, but you told me if I got this, I was gonna be in good shape. The woman who was running the waitlist management, she said, look, you apply next year. You applied early decision or early action. If you apply early action again, you have your score. You are going to look very, very, very favorably upon by our admissions committee.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, that's That's a nice prize. So then I also run over to Michigan, and I'm like, well, and boy, Michigan was kind of cryptic. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. They're like, well, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
We don't really know if this is going to help you, but we appreciate that you actually tried this. This is it. This is in your average. What do you mean you appreciate it? Like,
and in Michigan's defense, because I anybody who's watched too many of my videos, I think I've made a lot of mention of Ross over the years. I'm a fan of. I've seen them make a lot of great admissions decisions. Know amazing people that have gone there. Very, very big fan of a lot of what goes on at Ross for a whole lot of reasons. In their defense a little bit, yeah. I mean, there's people like us get on YouTube and get on the forum and chatter, when they say too much, and it's something they have to be very careful of. And also, one of the things that gets really, really hard, and you experience this firsthand, both with your law school applications, where you got waitlisted, and again with GMAT, where it's like, yeah, as you get into, to some extent, round 3 and round 4, those late rounds, and certainly once you're in waitlist mode, you can do everything within your power to improve your odds. You can go retake the GMAT GRE, whatever executive assessment. You can be in touch. You can get a promotion. Keep in touch with the waitlist manager or whoever you're in touch with on the adcom. You can do all those things perfectly and have a whole lot of movement in your career. But the whole deal is, if a lot of people accept their offers and the class is full, the class is full, and it's really, really hard for these schools. It's a huge challenge. A lot of their hours go into trying to manage filling up that class. And some years, a lot of people decline their offers. Some years, people don't. Once you hit that round 3, round 4 waitlist kind of zone, a lot of it's out of your hands. You can do what you can do. And I think it's pretty interesting that you, of all people, with all of the things that kind of happen along the way and the length of this journey, that you happen to be the guy who kind of really managed that process well, maintained your relationships. It was obvious. It was, tell me if it's unfair, Evan, but I think it was probably very, very, very obvious to Darden in particular that you had developed an affinity for the school. It wasn't just a random program you're applying to. You knew it really well. You talked to a million people about it. I know you at the time knew students and alums and had done a lot of networking. And with all that communication, I'm sure it was abundantly clear to everybody at Darden, no, this guy really wants to be here. And yet, with all those things in your favor, class is full. Sorry, buddy.
And so I will say, so Darden, of the 3 schools I applied to, Darden, Michigan, NYU, I'd say that was the order of enthusiasm I had for the schools. NYU is a very clear distance. They're not that's not saying anything or taking away from
for your taste, right? And kind of based
for
on your
what I want to
right?
do.
Absolutely.
Exactly. For what I want to do, which is general management, strategy. That tends to be the order. Michigan and UVA have far better general management, whereas NYU is just far more financially driven and investment banking, private equity, and the like.
Right.
It was funny. This is so anecdotal, kind of off the rails a bit, but I was at a golf tournament in 2017. I wasn't playing. This was like the PGA. I was with a friend. We were driving back from the golf tournament in 2017, and this was before I had really committed to the idea of going to law school, but I was talking to him about good grad schools. I was like, I'd really like to end up at UVA one day. And he said, really? He's like, I'm like, yeah, you know what? They have really nice colors. They match our high school's colors. Jefferson built it, so there's good history there. I hear the weather's pretty good too. Yeah, you know what? Of all the schools, like I think UVA would be nice. I was kind of kidding, but at the time, like I feel like I incepted myself, like Inception. It happened 6 years ahead of time.
Fair enough.
So yes, being waitlisted there, I showed probably more enthusiasm for Darden than anything else or any other school, and to then have June come around, and the waitlist manager reached out to me directly, and she's like, "Look, it's probably not going to happen. You'll get the email in a week, but just know." You need to apply next year because we will be looking out for the application. And that wasn't the general email of, oh, we're sorry, reapply. This was a personal email that was like, no, you get in the door.
And I can't emphasize this enough for anybody, wherever you are in your process, whether you're just starting with the GMAT and vaguely thinking about applications, or it's it might be way down the line for you. Maybe you're in it right now. That whole business of the schools knowing that you want to be at that school and there's reasons why, and you've done your research and you've done, whatever visits, however much contact you can have with students, alums, maybe faculty, certainly admissions committees, it is such a big deal. Because when you apply to Darden and it's ranked wherever it's ranked in all the rankings, they're going to say something a little bit different, of course, but it's ranked wherever it's ranked. It's not Harvard. It's not Stanford. Is this a backup school for you and you'd really rather go somewhere else? Or is this really a place where you've done the homework and the introspection to say, I want to be at Darden or whatever the school is that you're applying to? And it is such a big deal. And certainly off the record, usually on the record as well, admissions committee people will tell you this is a really big deal to us. And that's why you were getting that love and that communication so clearly from Darden, and very much a credit to that waitlist manager for recognizing and being given the freedom to say, hey, you manage these relationships the way you need to make sure that we're getting people in the door who are going to be phenomenally enthusiastic students, alums. I think everybody who knows you, like there's an enthusiasm and energy anyway, but the excitement to go to Darden, that is maybe the single biggest thing that has gotten you to Darden.
I couldn't agree more. I would say, and I kind of wrote this in my debrief, you have to know, so much like a consultant, you're going to get that gut feeling of, okay, like this is the one for me. Exactly. With business school, you want to feel the love, ladies and gentlemen. And boy, I felt the love from Darden more than anybody else. And I spoke to neighbors about this too. And they were like, and I described every communication I had with them, everything that had occurred. They're like, no, that's your school.
That's your place.
This is going above and beyond. And when you find your school, again, it's like going back to that analogy a little bit earlier about the woman. When you find the girl or guy, so yes, I am a straight male, therefore I'm saying woman. But when you find her or him, you know, and that, so it sucked being rejected, but at the same time, I knew I was on the cusp. I had been told that they liked the score, that I had a very good chance, especially as a re-app, and that just fueled my fire into the fourth year, which is coming into 2022.
Okay, so let's talk about year 4, and maybe we can finish this up before August.
I'm okay staying here the whole time.
And by the way, I'm not sure if this made it on the screen yet, but there is a Darden tour and overview video coming in a week or two. Yeah, thank you. And I assume that's with Fernando, is my assumption.
I would assume so, yeah.
But he's fantastic. Fantastic guy to kind of bring you through a tour of Darden. And so keep an eye out for that if you like what we're saying about Darden and you're going, these sound like real humans running this business school. That's a place I might like to apply to. Anyway, back to you, Evan.
You get to come to school with me. I mean, let's be fair here.
If you hurry,
that isn't the biggest selling point.
Okay, so there you go. That's some extra applications for Ross. Just kidding, Evan. All right, so we're on year 4. It's fall. You are absolute no-brainer, obviously, to reapply to Darden. Of course, you did that. And briefly, take us through. So what happened? Where else did you apply? How did all that feel? Were you kind of doing that just to cover your butt? Take us through briefly kind of what happened in that round.
Great question. So I used a Ringo again. I had still maintained that relationship. I was this close. I was not going to risk not being accepted over a couple $1,000s of not investing in a proper consultant to help me write essays and to just, or not write essays. That's obviously incorrect, but just help me through that essay process.
And with your messaging and your overall, hey, what are they seeing out of this? Getting that extra set of eyes.
Right. And if Darden is watching this, they did not write my essays. No, I wrote my essays.
A Ringo is not that way. None of the good ones are. Like, I don't think we'd mention anybody here who does that kind of thing. But the added challenge you have, and this is where maybe we get a practical thing for folks watching as a reapplicant, one of the challenges can be, well, wait a minute, I just wrote these things, maybe depending on the application rounds, maybe even just a few months earlier. Maybe it's been a year, maybe it's been a good bit less than that, depending on how the timing works out. You go round 2, 1 year, early decision, early action, round 1. The second cycle, it might only be, 7, 8, 9 months. Well, not much has changed. Maybe they're asking very similar, even identical questions. Now and again, different schools have different policies. Sometimes you can just write a reapplicant essay. Sometimes you got to reproduce the whole thing, but you've got to come up with things. They've got your old application. It's there. They've read it. They still have it. It's in the file. And as a reapplicant, you've got to find ways to use those words, however many you're given, wisely, differently, keep it fresh. not recycle too much, recycle the things you want them to read twice, come up with fresh stuff. Tell us a little bit about that challenge. And I think that's probably where a consultant really can help you.
It's far harder, and you would think it would be the opposite, but you made a great point. It is far harder writing your essays the second time if you're a reapplicant. The first time around, it's all new, to Charles's point. They don't know who you are. You are telling them your story. It is a brand new book. The problem is what happens when you're writing them the same book the second time. I struggled immensely. I mean, there were nights there weren't sleepless nights, but there were nights I sat up just trying to think, like, how on earth am I going to try to explain this in a different way? How am I going to show them my empathy in a different way, my leadership in a different way? Boy, I used a lot of bullets the first time around. I don't know how many are left in the chamber. And it took business school applications, law school applications. They're supposed to help you do an introspection and figure out, like, okay, who you are and what you are. If you do them right, it's almost like therapy.
Yes, 100%.
Boy, did I have to dig deep on that second time. I mean, I had to go to places I never wanted to go to ever again. But you know what? The essays turned out really well because of how thoroughly I and Ringo helped, taking you through that step-by-step process of finding that inner self, the self within the self.
Did you work with Danielle the second year as well? Okay, cool. Because I wouldn't have been shocked if you'd shaken it up and used somebody else at a Ringo the second time, because as awesome as she was, it's like, I wouldn't have been shocked if she had advised you to say, hey, let's get another voice in here.
So we had other voices chiming in repeatedly.
Right. And I know Jen was involved personally in a lot of your stuff.
Jen was involved. Other consultants had pitched in every now and again, but Dino and I had established such a cordial and tight bond. It only seemed natural to help, to help that process along by having her be my primary again.
Yep. Awesome.
And that helped a bit, especially with the stress. I mean, that's the other thing. Consultants help you with stress. They are there to project manage you. They're help to set deadlines and help manage you so you don't feel overwhelmed like you're drowning. So that I had to go very deep on those applications for Darden and Michigan. So those were the only two schools I was a re-app for. So I applied to 3 other schools: Dartmouth, Duke, and Cornell.
And let me ask you this, Evan, how enthusiastic? And part of what's so funky about this, right, is that this is a long process, right? So you get in June, you find out, oh, I didn't get off the wait list at Darden. Okay, you can apply early in the early rounds. You're still 6 months from that, rejection, didn't get off the wait list at Darden. You're still 6 months away from decisions. What's going through your head in terms of how you feel about going to these schools? Was Darden consistently still, I want to go to Darden and I'm applying to these to cover my butt because you never know and life is uncertain, and that was it? Or did you have moments of like, well, actually, it'd be really nice to be at Dartmouth this time of year or whatever? Or were you pretty clear the whole time? It's like, Darden's your number one and the other 4 are butt covering.
Yeah, so once I had the GRE and I knew based on Darden and Michigan's feedback, I knew that was pretty much the thing that held up the application for both of them. And that gave me a lot of confidence because I knew I had supposedly a good profile and that apparently I was a decent enough writer. I had hired the right folks to help bring out my story. I'll say Darden was 1A, 1B with Dartmouth. So Tuck and Darden, my point was if I got into either one of them, I was going to be as happy as a clam. Cool. They were for different reasons, but they're very similar schools, very similar student body. In fact, of all the schools, they have the 2 most similar student bodies. And from what I've read and been told and seen by,
how so? Say more about what are those similarities? Is it about the numbers and demographics? Or are you talking about kind of something else more culturally that those student bodies?
Academics. I know a lot of people, they kind of like most business school students. I'm speaking generalities here, so nobody bite my head off. But business schools have a very bad reputation of, go enjoy your party for 2 years. Academics aren't that important. Go and network and really get your jobs. And the 2 schools, at least from the 5 that I applied to, that actually do have a pretty heavy focus on academics were Tuck and Darden. Now, I think Yale also focuses on them quite a bit, but Darden is called the Darden Boot Camp. They do that for a reason. Darden punishes students. They want you to learn. How surprising. A school wants you to learn. And that was incredibly appealing to actually figure out that, yeah, even though if the worst case scenario happens, I'm coming out 2 years later and I actually know how to think differently and can potentially manage a program or a firm. So that's why they were 1A, 1B. But that's not a takeaway from Cornell, Duke, or Michigan. Those were they were 1A, 1B because they were my favorites.
Right. Those are the ones that resonated with you. The approach to academics resonated with you. It's not a shot at the academics in any of their schools, but there was something about sort of the way the academics were being presented to you by all of the people you networked with. Thank you so much, Ali. This is lovely. Thank you, everybody, for all the positive comments for both of us. And I agree with a lot of people.
But yes,
I agree. Well, I agree with getting a lot of like, Evan, your energy is just infectious, and it always has been, which is why we love you here and why you helped me make it through 24 hours last year. But none of this. I mean, obviously, none of this is a shot at the other schools. But in all of that networking, there's, tell me if this is unfair, Evan, but you get this feel for the school.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in ways that I think end up being pretty intangible. Well, what is it exactly about Darden's academics versus, let's say, Cornell's academics? And I've heard wonderful things about Cornell's academics and the approach over the years too, right? Could you sit here and list the things that for your taste make Darden's approach to academics better? It'd be really hard to do that.
I was just about to say, this is a very difficult question to answer.
And I wouldn't, right. And that's kind of the point, right? Is that it's more about that feel that you develop and, working with applicants and communicating with people informally on GMAT Club over the years and all the students we've worked with, tutoring and admissions consulting, all that over the years, you get some of these questions and I feel like there's the expectation that there's going to be some, oh, well, which school is more academic? Can't really answer that. Which school has better academics? Nope, can't really answer that. What you want to answer is when you really spend the time getting to know the schools, talking to alums, talking to students, talking to admissions committees. If you have an opportunity to connect with faculty, that's awesome too. What's the feel you get? What's that vibe? And does it resonate with you? And do the conversations you have about what goes on there, does that resonate with you? And that's, I think, tell me if you disagree, that I think is more the question, is not school one better at academics than school two. It's, does it resonate more or less with you personally, the way they're going about it? And does that feel like the right way to do academics?
Absolutely. And Darden, Darden is 100% case study based. Dartmouth is about 75%. So case study was going to be something that I was looking for. I was looking for it on the heavier side of things. I did not apply to Harvard. I was never going to get into Harvard, not in a million years. So people may ask, well, why didn't you apply to Harvard? Well, yeah, just because I help run GMAT Club, just because I have a good personality, does not mean I'm getting into Harvard. I wish, but no. So that's where Dartmouth and UVA came into play, which is they were very heavy with the case study method and really spoke to the well-rounded education that could help with a general management role rather than, say, something in tech or something in investment banking. Although, to be fair, Dartmouth is one of the best for IB, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I think we're pretty close to a good stopping point here. Punchline is pretty obvious that year 4, obviously get into Darden again, choose Darden. Here we are. It says UVA Darden class of 25 underneath your lovely smiling face right now. Getting a couple of questions in here that I think might be worth addressing, from Pooja, and great to see you again, Pooja. Any motivational tips for GMAT aspirants?
So before I answer that, do you mind if I add just a little bit more color to this? Go for it. I know we're already way over time, so it probably doesn't really matter. I will say, so I know when you apply, you're kind of just sitting there, you're twiddling your thumbs. You're like, goodness, oh goodness. Now when is the day? You come on GMAT Club, you see like 2 days, 1 day. I actually didn't realize Darden's calls were going out the day that they were going out. I thought it was the day after.
Interesting.
And so I realized I was working all day. I could have cared less. There were people panicking on the forum. Like, why is everybody panicking? And I posted the Animal House. Do you know Animal House?
Oh, yeah.
I posted John Belushi. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? No, and it's not over now. And I couldn't realize why people were panicking. And then 4 o'clock rolled around, and all of a sudden calls started going out, and people were losing their minds. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I thought for sure, and this just goes to planning. I thought for sure I was going to be sitting here. The calls going to come in. or if I were to be accepted, I was going to be all happy and beside myself. I was going to be able to handle it well, but not lose my mind. No. I was in a very awkward situation and location when the call came in. I don't want to say where, Charles. I can tell you offline what that was.
I might not want to know, but keep going.
Yeah, you'll laugh. It's nothing bad, but it's not something I'm willing to share with everybody here. Because I was in a very awkward position at the time, and and the call came in. It said Charlottesville, Virginia. I went numb. I went completely numb. My blood drained from my face. I was like, I've been getting a couple spam calls. If this is a spam call, I will turn into Liam Neeson and go and hunt down whoever did this. I will end them. I answer. I say hello. It's the woman who interviewed me at Darden, not only the first time around, but the second time around as well.
Same interviewer both times.
And it was by accident, according to her. I knew as soon as I saw her name pop up the day before, I was like, awesome. This is going to go great because we had such a good relationship prior.
Awesome. That's great.
And as soon as I went on, she's like, oh my God, I know you. I'm like, yes, I know you too. And her name's Mayrav. She's a sweetheart. I mean, unbelievable. She called me, and I feel horrible admitting to this. I went basically deaf. So basically, she says, hi, is this Evan? I'm like, yeah. She's like, how are you doing today? I'm like, good. And she's like, well, I'm calling, and I'm like, and basically started like, is this the call? And she said, what do you mean, is this call? I'm like, is this the call? Is this the call? Tell me this is the call. And she says, well, I have some news for you. I'm like, good news? She said, yes, it's good news. You've been admitted. I'll see you. No, congratulations. I'll see you in Charlottesville. I was a babbling idiot for the next 5 minutes talking with her. I didn't even hear her name. I had to Google the phone number and realize it was her to figure out who I had spoken to. And then I was running down my street for an hour yelling because my buddy, who's now my roommate at UVA, got in 2 minutes after I did.
Wow.
And we went to undergrad together.
Wild.
So we were screaming over the phone. I'm surprised no one called the police. Yeah, no, sorry, wrong number. I would have cried my eyes out.
Is this Evan? Sorry, wrong number.
Right.
If I ever work on admissions committee, I am totally pulling that on people because I think it'd be hilarious. And then call right back. No, just kidding.
Charles,
you got it.
I was almost in tears. I was so happy. I could tell. I was pulling back tears.
Yep.
It was one of the greatest moments of my life. And
awesome.
So for anyone who gets in, when you get into a school you really want to go to, BB has talked to me about this quite a bit. Getting into business school, married, your first kid. These are huge moments in your life that you remember forever. I could not agree more. That was an amazing moment. And I just hope everyone realizes that. And then, so just to wrap it up, admitted to UVA, admitted to Cornell, waitlisted Michigan. I botched the interview pretty badly. Otherwise, I definitely would have been admitted. It was on Halloween, and that should have, foreshadowed something. And then I was rejected from Duke and Dartmouth. And pro tip, don't ever tell a school that they're not very special. If you tell them that, they're going to reject you. And Duke was ready to slap that no the minute I hung up the phone. So just be aware. Don't do that. They don't. Pro tip. But so Pooja asked so how do you feel motivated? I think was the question.
Yeah, and her question was specifically around the GMAT, and since this is more about, I think we can abstract from the GMAT a little bit here. So any motivational tips for GMAT aspirants? I'm going to twist your question a little bit, Pooja. Apologies. Any motivational tips in general for applicants? Because I think it applies to all of it. You're taking the GMAT, you're taking the GRE, EA, wherever you are in the process.
Yeah.
You're writing your first round of essays, your second, your third, in Evan's case, your fourth. How does that keep you going? Like, how do you stay motivated?
So I'll say what I've said on the forum quite a bit. I've typed it out. I may have said it during videos as well. If this is your dream, and law school clearly was not, but business school clearly was for me, there is nothing in the world that's going to stand in your way. You are going to make every sacrifice imaginable to get to that point. And if you are not willing to go above and beyond to get there, this is not your dream. And you may, as Charles said earlier, you may not be suited for a grad school. Or more importantly, this may not be what you truly want to do. Be honest with yourself. Never say, well, I studied for the GMAT for 2 years and no, I don't want to study for the GRE. Or I've studied for the GMAT for 2 years and no, I don't want to go to law school or whatever. Sunk costs are irrelevant. It's all about the future. I say for a year for the LSAT, it meant nothing in the end, as we've already heard many times. Never let that sunk cost sink you, and always be honest with yourself. If this is what you want, you're going to drive for it, and you're always going to want to get there.
I love it. I think that's a perfect stopping point, Evan. We're only 25 minutes past the time here. So everybody who's put up with us live, even if you've put up with us not live, congratulations for making it to the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Danny. You're too kind. Yeah, yes, that is a real photo.
I was waiting for somebody to do that. So he threatened to bench press the admissions committee at Darden, and that's why they eventually relented and let him in. All right. Evan, Nightblade, I always forget the numbers that come after it. Nightblade
354. It's so different conversation for a different day.
Nightblade 354 on the forum. Hit him up. He's been generous with his time for years and years and years here at GMAT Club. You got advice, want to hear more about his journey, you know where to find him. Very easy guy to find. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and keep going. Sometimes this is tough. 4 years. You want it. It's going to happen, guys. Evan, you're awesome. Congratulations, brother. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. My headphone popped out. I'm like, uh-oh, what happened here? I can't hear.
You are a very elegant human. Evan, thank you so much for doing this. It's a ton of fun. And congratulations, brother.
Bye, everybody. I hope you got a lot out of this.
Thank you, everybody.